Hey folks, LaTonya here. I'm so excited. The registration for Coaching Below the Surface is now open. So you could get more information at changecoaches.io. But just a few things with this program that I'm so excited about. This is going to go so much more beyond DEI. And it's all about coaching and in certain environments, coaching, creating mutual safety. It's ICF approved. It's SHRM approved. You'll get to meet with a cohort of leaders that are like-minded, that will stretch you in new ways. So visit our landing page, join our wait list, and there will be a 10% discount for anyone that registers by May 15th. We'll see you there, folks. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leading Below the Surface podcast. I'm LaTonya Wilkins, your host, award-winning executive coach and author. And I am so excited to be joined by another author. I love all my guests, but I have a soft place in my heart for the other authors. And so she wrote this book. If you're watching on YouTube, it's called Beyond Discomfort, Why Inclusive Leadership is So Hard. It's really interesting because some of you probably wonder how I find my guests. And all my guests are sourced organically. We get a lot of emails for people that want to be on the show, but as a below the surface leader, I like to source organically. And so I ran into Nadia on LinkedIn. I think we were I don't know if we were connected or I connected with her, but I just really loved everything she was talking about, especially right now with the state of the world and just the topic of inclusive leadership being hard. And when I saw that the name of her book, I was like, wow, someone really gets that this is a hard thing. And it's hard for us internally. I think it's also hard to understand why this stuff is so important. It's also hard to convince leaders. I don't even want to say convince, but to make sure that leaders know or help leaders see how this will impact their journey and that there is an ROI. So it's just, in her book, I've had a chance to flip through it, and there's a lot in here. It covers a lot of ground, and it actually, I love it because it takes inclusion to a different place. It's not just DEI. And it was I've been looking for something like this. So I'm so excited to have this conversation. So Nadia, what did I miss in your introduction?
Well, thank you very, very much, LaTonya, for having me, for sharing some of the concepts in my book in terms of, tackling why inclusive leadership is hard. And as a psychologist, which is, I suppose, something that you haven't mentioned, I'm a chartered occupational or business psychologist, depending on where you are in the world, it's called different things. But I've worked for over 20 years with organizations globally, with leaders at a cultural level as well. And when facilitating conversations with leaders around the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it became clear to me that many, not all, but many were stuck. But they were stuck for different reasons. And that's the stuckness is the hard part. I was like, well, what's going on? Why does it jar with certain people in certain ways and jar in different ways with other people? What's going on? And it was very clear to me, there's a real difference with the work we're talking when it comes to inclusive leadership compared to any other leadership concept, which is that actually it's really personal. It's really, really emotive and evocative because it's hitting at some of our core beliefs and how we experience the world, our reality. And of course, as humans, we want to believe that there's only one reality. And so that's why inclusive leadership is so hard. And so my whole book is based around that feeling of our values and the reality that we hold and how that can make us feel uncomfortable when it comes to the conversations we have around what it means to be inclusive.
If you are watching on YouTube, you see me getting very excited about what you just said. And yes, I think this is so important to talk about and such important points that the emotive piece, the feeling piece, all of this, because, I think right now in the United States, there's just been so much, there have been a lot of attacks on DEI. And like I said, I I believe in, let's get into this conversation. Cause, for me, I believe inclusion goes beyond DEI. And I think it's so much like, there's so much there. There's a wellness piece. There's an innovation piece. There is a mental health piece. But what do you think? Like, how would you define that? Or are you thinking, LaTonya, you are so wrong? Like, this is DEI. Are you trying to steer us away from DEI? What are you thinking right now, Nadia?
I think you're spot on. I think that the reason why it's so knotty and complex as a subject, so inclusive leadership or inclusion, is because it covers so many things. It has a knock-on impact. How we are, how we see the world, how we behave in the world, how we act, how we relate to other people. It all has a knock-on impact on outcomes, ultimately. And for what you've just mentioned in terms of innovation, in terms of sustainability, whether it's environmental or otherwise, whether it's, in terms of mental health and well-being, whether it's in terms of education and the state of caring and, in terms of with our children, managing work with care, different types of care. I mean, it just covers so much. And for me, it's a central part of life, it can really, if we lean into the discomfort of what it means to be inclusive, and we actually take that and hold it close to our heart in terms of how we intend to be and in the world, not just at work, but also in, outside of work and with our family and with our friends and how we interact with strangers, that the world would be a better place. And not only a better place, but actually there's so many things that we could solve, really significant world problems, if we worked together and we could collaborate in a way that really respected and brought together our differences.
You covered a lot of ground there. You talked about sustainability. You talked about all these other areas where inclusion is good. And so like let's get beyond the DEI stuff, right? So now that we're in this world that, whether we like it or not, I mean, hint, I don't like it, but we're in it. And I think it's like thought leaders like us that have to, basically we're challenged to come up with some of the solutions, right, to some of these problems. And I think as thought leaders, it's like we try not to complain so much because we're trying to figure out how to bring people together and what we need to do. How do we solve today's problems, which are different from yesterday's problems were just as hard. So what are some ways, or how can we, how would inclusion be valuable to the world right now? And again, let's get outside of DEI. Let's think about all the wars we have right now, the I don't even know how to put this in America, but we're recording this in April of 2025. So I would say all the shocks in America and everything that's going on, the instability in America, the instability. I know you're in England and you had some of this instability as well. For many years. And it just seems like it's just contagious around the world. Climate change. So what are some of these things that, how can inclusion address some of this stuff? Because I do feel like when you first started talking and you said, this is so much bigger, it's I just feel like inclusion's getting put in this box and it's DEI and that's it. And it's so much more than corporations. It's so much more than for profit. It's got this huge societal benefit.
One of the things that I've seen, let me start there. One of the things I have seen which disappoints me around human nature. And as a psychologist, it's really fascinating, but it's also really painful to observe in humans this desire, such an overwhelming desire for power. And this is what I see throughout the world as the core issue that prevents us as a human race, right, from evolving and developing. Actually, one of my podcast show episodes, I was talking to an incredible woman, based in the US, called Denise Hamilton. And she was just she said to me something that's really stuck with me, which is, I've got a horrible feeling that the cure for cancer has is out there, but the person who has the cure was born into the wrong body. Right? And it's kind of like,
I
we
know
are
Denise. That's
missing.
funny.
Right. Oh, Denise is
I know Denise,
fabulous.
yeah.
I mean, she said it much more eloquently than I did. And she's just, I was just like, yes, how many more? We can't afford to let go of this, some of the biggest problems that could be solved potentially, just because some people want to hang on to their power, and that they feel that they want the world to remain as it is, without change, with them remaining as powerful as they are and continuing to elevate people like that. Like, it's the worst of human nature to think that we can't all recognize the value of difference, of the value that we all can bring if we were able to acknowledge and collaborate and respect. Like, what kind of race doesn't want to survive? Like, actually sees that there's such a significant hierarchy and is willing to let go of some powerful opportunities simply to maintain what they have, and that's the worst of humans. I think that's what we're seeing. That's the hardest part for me of living in today's world, April 2025. Like, this is hard to reconcile.
What would you say, even in our society, like, and in our everyday lives, what's the relationship between power and inclusion?
Where there is power, and just be really clear, it's not bad. Power's not a bad thing. We're not labeling anything here. It's a concept. It's something quite, tangible and visible in some respects, but also intangible and invisible in many other respects. So power can be things like hierarchy, but it can also be things like who historically in this world tends to be favored over some people. And that's where it gets really knotty and complex. As leaders who have hierarchical power, they can also benefit because they have some of the intangible, invisible things that mean that actually people will place more weight on what they say, or that they're more likely to be given the job over someone else. And so when it comes to power and inclusion, they go hand in hand. And this is why that backlash against DEI and wokeism and all of that, this is why it has come about, because the discomfort of recognizing that because of who I am, just simply because of things that I haven't had any control over, they're just because I was born that way, that has given me some form of power that has been unearned. And it isn't due to all of my talent and all of my brilliance that I am where I am in life. But the thing is, once humans get a taste of power, they find it very, very hard to let go of it, no matter, even if they accept and acknowledge that they may have inadvertently benefited from how the world is, how it might have given them a leg up because of who they are. It's a really bitter pill to swallow, to think that because of, for example, if we're thinking about color of skin, because of your whiteness, you have benefited more than someone who would be equally as capable of doing the job that you have done. So that's where we get stuck when it comes to power and advantage, the advantage that power offers. And inclusion, what we're trying to say is that you don't have to give up anything here. However, it's really important that you spend the time understanding who you are, the lens that you have operated in, how you see the world, and how that could be different if you changed certain characteristics about who you are, if you changed your gender, if you changed your sexuality, if you changed the color of your skin, that you might have had a very, very different experience and your reality could be different. And inclusion is encouraging that deep inner work to open up and be just a little bit curious, that little bit open-minded And even though it's uncomfortable to recognize that you may have had some successes in life that weren't purely down to your brilliance, that's okay, but you don't want to further collude in a system that does that, and that you're willing to look around you and lift others up so that they have the opportunity that you had and they hadn't. So yeah, it was a long-winded response, I suppose, to this intricacy, this very sort of interdependency between power and inclusion.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you were talking, I was thinking about a couple different things. One was last weekend, I was on a walk with a friend of mine and her baby. We do that. We do that sometimes on weekends to get the baby out. And we have these really great conversations while we have this baby. And the baby's like out in the sun and we're doing these conversations. And one of the things we talked about was the transition of power that's going to happen when baby boomers die off. Because there's like all this concentration. And we were talking about how that's going to just go down to their offspring. And like The Economist posted, I love The Economist. I read The Economist a lot because it's like it's not an American publication. I try to make sure that I round out and read different things. And they talked about how to get rich in today's society. And it was basically you have to have rich parents to be rich. And so me and my friend were talking about like how when this is handed down, what's going to happen? Like, will we have policies by then to make sure that we redistribute? Because it's just making the problem worse. And the other thing it made me think about was Mark Cuban. And he is like I follow him on Blue Sky. I don't get on there a ton, but it's just like his ideas on how to redistribute and because there's not that many people talking about this. So it's like when I hear a billionaire or see a billionaire talking about this, like we need their ideas too. And so he has all these different ideas. Like he talks about, one of the ideas I love that he was talking about were like small businesses. And instead of us, I mean, it's so expensive. Well, in the US, we have to buy our own health insurance. It's expensive. And I have to buy mine now because my family situation changed. But yeah, so he was talking about like networks instead of us buying the single. Like, why don't we create networks and pools, like kind of exchanges where we could buy it as a small business association, right? But it's like in America, they don't really let us do that, right? It's like, because if we do that, then someone's going to be missing out. But they don't have to be missing out, right? They don't have to be there's ways to talk about this or ways to conceive this. And so, yeah, it's like, so what do you think about all that? 'Cause I think this is all related to what you were just talking about. It's like this power, it's like, Mark Cuban, he's not perfect, but there is inclusion. Like he does have inclusion in his, he's thinking about other people outside of his income bracket and society, because, it's like if society doesn't succeed, then I don't think he sees himself as succeeding, right?
And if only all of the other billionaires and powerful people out there could recognize and understand the systemic perspective of the world, that why does one person or one country have to gain so much that it's to the detriment of everyone else and all the other countries? And that is quite a again, coming back to the worst of humanity. And we've seen it as a pattern throughout history. And as much as we'd like to see, we see every so often these amazing people who go against the grain and actually will show generosity and will show kindness and will show respect for others, even though other people may be looking down at them. But it's rare. It's rare in human history. It's really rare to think that people are willing to let go of what they feel they have earned, right? What they feel is what they deserve. their entitlement to, because why shouldn't they enjoy it? I've been watching HBO's White Lotus. I don't know if you've been watching that, but that's a fabulous way of, in the characters and in the conversations, bringing out that thought of how wealth is something that you're entitled to. Like one of the characters actually says, they're a very, very wealthy family. She was like, well, we should enjoy what we have, because if we're not enjoying it, then it's almost like bad taste, like to the people who don't have it. We should enjoy it so that we're making the most of what we have. And it was just that moment of, my goodness, not once would you consider sharing, not once would you consider redistributing, kind of what you were talking about there. And we don't have to go so far as, communism.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a dirty word here.
Right?
Yeah, people hate that word. Socialism, communism. Yeah, it's like
we don't have to go as far as that. Like,
right.
Well, sometimes that's why I mean, when people are talking about sharing and making sure everyone has equal rights and equal amounts of money and distributing and controlling in that to that degree, we don't have to go as far as that.
Mm-hmm.
However, we do have, that's one extreme. And then we have the other extreme. And we're kind of somewhere not quite in between. We're sort of towards the end where people aren't willing to share what they have. That we have this, as you said, continuing generation by generation.
So let's talk a little bit about what I was just saying, and like what you were just saying around solving the world's problems. Again, as thought leaders, this is something that I think we have an opportunity to kind of rise to the occasion, and be able to like try to figure some of this stuff out. And I know we don't have all the answers, but I do know that we can at least take the conversation maybe a half step forward. But let's think about like billionaires and like how, again, I'm not putting him on a pedestal. He's not perfect, but I just been inspired by some of the things that Mark Cuban says. And like, so is it just that he's the luck of the draw? And like, how do we attract more people to some of these concepts without, because I mean, like you said, you don't have to give up. And I think he sees that. It's not like he's not compromising his own positions that much.
Yeah, from a psychological perspective, we know that people are more likely to listen to people who look like them, sound like them. And I do think that there needs to be a movement of some kind where people who typically might fall into majority characteristics. So those who, and when I talk about that, I'm talking about people who historically have some unearned advantage because of who they are, whether it's the color they are, whether it's the color of their skin, whether it's their gender, whether it's their ability, and we all have some sort of advantage in different ways. But for those people who more look like the people we currently see at the top of organizations, at the top of the political sphere, and the top of whatever it is that, billionaires, for example, top of wealth, that those people at the top is them that we need to see a change in their attitude, get them to understand that it's harming not only people who are different to them, but actually the current state of play is harming people who are similar to them too.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of people who have great wealth are white. Okay, I'm just going to say it. I think that's fact. Believe it's true. So it's more powerful for then people of a white background to be able to say, this isn't okay. What's happening is not all right. We don't want this. This is what's happening as a consequence of this extreme power and this, exacerbating those who have and those who have not. It's hurting us too. This is the impact it's having on us. And until people feel there's a sense of threat to themselves, no change is going to happen. As humans, that's just generally how we work. We need to feel a sense of threat. If we're happy with the status quo, why would we do anything? Only through fear, through threats, through something bad happening as a consequence of maintaining the status quo. We've seen this in lots of psychological research. We need a burning platform for change. Otherwise, as humans, we're pretty lazy. We like our life the way it is. So there needs to be the burning platform, but that burning platform won't come by listening. They're not going to pay as much attention to people who they feel are inferior to them, essentially. Why should they listen to those voices? I don't know how we create that, but it does need to come from certain people.
Yeah, me and my friends used to joke. Well, I can't say used to because it was just like a couple months ago, but we were joking around like the billionaires kind of organizing. But there's that whole initiative in the US where they donate, I think it was a big portion, maybe it was half their earnings. And I think most of them, like Bill Gates had signed on and all these other people. Yeah, there was like, I can't remember the name of it, folks, but it's, so if any of you know, you can leave a comment here on YouTube. But yeah, there was a whole initiative around billionaires, giving away a big portion of their debt, or of their earnings because, they're going to die and it's just, again, pass it down. And like, even if you start like a bunch of foundations, you're still going to have extra money. And so it's like, where do you put that? So, okay. So we have just a few minutes left and like, I want to get to this because folks, it took us a long time to get this scheduled. In Nadia's book, she has a 2x2 that I think is really interesting. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see me looking at this 2x2. But she, like, one axis is receptiveness to learn, and the second, the x-axis is willingness to act. So the horizontal axis at the bottom, low, high, and beyond discomfort is a high willingness to act and a high receptiveness to learn. And the opposite of that is the disconcerted, and that's low receptiveness to learn, low willingness to act. So obviously I teach MBA students. So let's use this as a case study, right? Let's talk about that receptiveness to learn. So if you're watching on YouTube, you probably see on the side of my shelf here, I have the book Mindset, right? And it's like, I don't know. Some people are born with growth mindset, some are not. And you could also build that. I mean, as a psychologist, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think some people just like, I do think for me, I was just born with that mindset. I think I was lucky in that way. Like, that I just always growing and and that's why I'm an entrepreneur and an author. It's because so like, how do you get to receptiveness to learn? So if you're low, are you low forever?
No, for sure. And the chances are it was the people around you that helped develop that growth mindset as opposed to just being born with it. It might be a personality attribute that you have as personality type that is someone who feels that their locus of control, as in like what they feel they can control in their life, is down to them as opposed to external factors. However, the chances are you also had role models around you that help develop that growth mindset. And it's similar with that receptiveness to learning. What I'm talking about here in the book is when people feel like they can be curious about other people, that their receptiveness to learning about those who are different to them, but also receptive to learning about themselves. And often the discomfort that we experience is when we're trying to shut down and push away, like tightly close that lid, when our personal values or beliefs comes against and doesn't align with some information that the external environment's giving us. And those people who are less receptive to learning about themselves means that they're less able to lead inclusively, because you can't lead inclusively unless you really understand who you are, the lens that you operate through, your reality, as I mentioned before. And so that discomfort that comes about the concept of leading beyond discomfort is that it doesn't go away. You're always going to feel uncomfortable when your personal reality doesn't match up with what someone else is telling you or what data's been showing. And some people will skirt around that, and they'll find other data that will tell a different story, or they'll say, well, that's just a few, that's just 100 people. I'm sure that doesn't apply elsewhere or to other parts of the world. They'll try and pick holes in information in order for it to tally and align with their own reality. So that receptiveness to learning is that open-mindedness, that curiosity. Oh my goodness, is it possible? It's not that my reality is wrong, but it is just my reality, and that there are multiple realities out there. And in order to be a more inclusive leader, I need to be open to having conversations to find out what those realities are. Because until I have the bigger picture, as uncomfortable as it could be to learn that there are multiple realities that I didn't know existed, that's what's going to make me the best leader I could be. That's what's going to get our organization to a place that's even greater, that can offer more, that can be more innovative, because actually we've heard and we've seen that people who feel included, feel like their voice can be heard, feel like they can contribute, that actually the organization benefits, tenfold and then some from hearing and being able to leverage everyone's difference. So that's the concept of receptiveness to learning. Yeah. So twofold: receptiveness to learning about yourself and doing the inner work, and receptive to learning about other people who are different to you.
Well, and this is an interesting thing too, because I was in a conversation yesterday, and like one of the people is like a climate, I guess I wouldn't say she's a climate psychologist, but she kind of is. She was talking about how the world is way further than we talk about, like with climate. Like basically it's like, it's in a dire situation. And my question to her, like we have these challenging conversations, but I was challenging her. So this is where I think things get off, because it's like, so are you going to say, and I talk about the concept meandering in the muck, and I do think that's important, where you have to be in the pit and you to get out. How would you, again, I don't want to say sell this, but why would people want to do this? I mean, I think about the losses in my life and the traumas, and like, why would I want to put myself through that?
Gosh.
It's a hard one, right? It's a hard, because it's like nobody wants to suffer. It's like, why do people force other people to suffer when they don't want to, or maybe they're just not ready. Maybe it's not their time.
Coming back to the burning platform here, because no one's going to change anything if they feel that they're going to suffer in some way. They're going to lose out in some way. And that is has been the biggest problem with the DEI narrative, is that it always feels like we're taking away from one to give to another, that someone's going to have to lose out in order for other people to gain. That short-termist perspective of when we're talking about climate change, when we're talking about inclusion, when we're talking about anything, it's hard for us as humans not to think in the short term. It's hard for us to think of not just our children's generation, but 5 generations after us when we're not on the planet anymore. But we don't think of that. We think about our children and maybe our grandchildren, but really that's as short term as we go.
I mean, I heard someone on a podcast say once, like, I don't have any children, so I don't really care. I was like, wow. But that's where people are, right?
Yeah. And everything in society is set up to, so for example, the political system in the UK, who are the people who have voting rights? Well, it's people who are 18 plus. When it came to Brexit, for example, when you looked at who had voted for Brexit and who hadn't, it was the older generation, some of whom weren't even on the planet. They'd passed on by the time Brexit came about.
Oh, wow.
Who voted for Brexit, right? Those people who were like, well, actually, yeah, the older people in the country were saying they wanted Brexit. When they did a poll of the 16, 17-year-olds who weren't eligible to vote yet, who would be 100% more impacted by the decision, they wouldn't have voted for Brexit. So we have this, everything in our system, in society, is geared up for just this certain group of people being able to make decisions on behalf of generations that come after them. And I think it is an issue, because if life's okay now, if the planet looks okay, there's blue sky, and what's the big deal? And if someone could actually visualize and paint forward, 3, 4, 5 generations time, what the world would look like. Some movies have, right? But it's so far-fetched that no one really thinks that it could happen. But if we could actually look into the future and see, I think that that's probably the platform, the burning platform that people need right now. Because why change if it feels like people do long endurance tasks, like people run marathons, and that is, as we always talk about, a marathon is an endurance task. It's a long-term goal. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's a short-term goal, but from a sense of actually you work up to it. It's hard, and you keep going. So we do have it within us. There's lots of evidence that we have it within us as humans to endure pain, suffering for a long-term gain. It's probably the minority who choose to, of their own volition.
Right.
Other people will, if there's a sense of fear and urgency about it. So that's essentially what we need to do when it comes to climate change, when it comes to inclusion. Give them a sense of, like, this will happen, that will happen. Maybe not in your lifetime. And that's the problem with it, is that it's so intangible.
Yes. Like, I don't think people believe it. And I think we're learning right now, because even here in the US, I don't think people believed a lot of what's happening now would happen. Like, which is interesting. And it's like, I don't know, maybe this is leading us somewhere where people will believe things. But I mean, there's so much here. Like, I have a client, like a coaching client, and she's a former journalist and, editor at a very prestigious org. And she's talking about misinformation. I mean, there's so much, like, how do we really think about this? But I know we are coming to time, and I know you're very busy. So, how can people find you, and how would you like people to connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm often on there. So please do direct message me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram. So that's at Nadia Nagamootoo. So you can find me easily there. On my website. So I've actually got 3 websites. Oh. So my company, I know, company website, which is avenirconsultingservices.com. And that's if you want to work with myself, with my team. Globally, we work to support organizations in the space of inclusion, whether it comes to inclusive leadership development or sponsorship programs or anything that helps tackle culturally the systemic inequities. Then my personal website, which is nadianagamootoo.com, that's where you can find information about my podcast show, which is called Why Care. Obviously, my book is available in most retailers, including Amazon. And doing keynotes as well, and then the book website. And if anyone does buy the book and wants more resources, then the book website beyond-discomfort.com is where to go, and that's got a free survey tool, some downloadables, and workbook and things like that.
Yeah.
So
we'll leave all that in the show notes. And thank you so much, Nadia. I think there's so much more we could talk about, so maybe we'll have a part 2 someday. But thank you, everybody, for joining today's podcast, and we'll see you next time.